Okay, welcome to today's live stream. This is the last one of January, unless for some crazy reason I decided to do one tonight, which is unlikely. I tried doing two yesterday, and the second one just crashed and burned a little bit. But today we're going to be talking about all of the logic rumors and what's next. We've come to another crossroads with the logic versioning. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. I hope that if you're watching this, you'll weigh in the comments and either give your opinions or the things you've heard if you're hearing things that the rest of us aren't. But I'm curious. I'm curious about the new version as it's being worked on and what's next for Logic. We're going to break down a lot of the stuff that we've seen in recent months and years. And we're going to be talking about some of the ancillary things because I think a lot of it ties together. And then, we'll go from there. So this is a little less formal. Hopefully we'll get a lot of audience participation. But the real truth is that we really are coming to the end of the current version of Logic. Let me switch over to my Logic screen here. We just got Logic 10.7.7 this week. And that was a small update. Most of them have been, except for we've had a couple larger ones that were, point upgrades over the past year. And then a number of really small things. This one was just fixing flex pitch analysis in 10.7.6 on Ventura. And so it was a really small fix as far as I can tell. We haven't gotten something that I was a little bit surprised about, and it means that the architecture must be remaining the same or they're just slow to getting it fixed. But we just got the new Mac Mini M2s arriving at people's houses. And so I'm surprised that there wasn't some sort of update to address new computer release, but perhaps we're just not needing to worry about it. Perhaps they've sorted that out so we didn't need anything. By the way, if you are using one of the new Mac Mini M2s, let us know in the comments. I'm curious to see if anybody who's watching is using it, because I'm sure there's got to be some sort of bumps along the road that will get fixed. So that's the only hope I think that we'll get a 10.7.8. And on one of the streams we did last week, we were looking through all of the release notes, and Logic has only gotten to like an X.X.8 one other time. And all the rest of them, they've just gotten to a 0.7 or a 0.6 or a 0.5 and then gone to the next version. So what we're looking at next is either a 10.8 or an 11. Could be either one of those. And frankly, we just don't know for sure what they're going to call it. They've done small upgrades or smaller upgrades at what should have been a big number upgrade. And they've done big upgrades at what number-wise was a small upgrade. So, Apple, I think, has a little bit of chaos sometimes in their numbering systems. Let me start by saying hi to everybody in the chat. Jerome, hello to the Netherlands. Awesome. Kurt says, I heard there will be a universal audio and Logic Pro integration. And then UAD plugins with Logic. Of course, this is one of the biggest rumors that has come up in recent times because of the hiring of, one of the UAD bigwigs. And we could talk more about that and actually look up some information about that. But that does and doesn't indicate things to come. I remember when Tom Homlinson was hired. He's the TH in THX. He was hired to be like in a similar role at Apple. And it's like we didn't get THX in Apple. We got some good things and a lot of renovations and stuff. But I remember talking to, oh, it's Tomlinson Holman. Oh, I think I said that all backwards. He's amazing. One of the best in the audio industry in terms of post-production. If you've ever read one of his books that he's written. And he came on board to Apple, and, I don't remember seeing anything that really said that was, his trademark, but we definitely have gone in good directions, and Apple seems to always surround themselves with some of the best thinkers in the business. And so, not always. I mean, I'm sure that there's a number of people working for different companies that would change how Apple does things, but so here we are, right, without some of that stuff. And then Jordan says, do we know how big the Logic development team is? I don't know specifically. I've talked to people about this. I'm not, so I've had a few people over the years, try to convince me that I should be part of the beta team at Apple. And I have always said no to that. I did ask once more information about it, but I decided I'd never wanted to be part of the beta team for Logic for a few reasons. One of them is the minute you join a team like that, I can't make videos like this anymore where we talk about things. All of a sudden you have to, keep your mouth shut. You can't conjecture without bias anymore because you typically see some of the things that are coming. And so I like making these videos and talking to people. I find a few things happen when you do this. One of them is that I learn new things from people who are like, this is what I really want. This is what I want. This is what I want. And we also find out some things that that maybe we don't want in conversations like this. So I've always shied away from being in that circle just because I like to feel a little bit more surprised and not to have to live with something in solitude for a long period of time. And then Yolan says, is this due to, Dave Tremblay from UA. And then Gigadeath says, I am doing beta testing for RME. It is no fun, real work. So I've been on beta tests over the years. I was beta tester on Bitwig when it first was being made. And I really have a lot of respect for the Bitwig team. And I was a beta tester for Studio One in the early days. And Gigadeath is right. It like takes all of the fun out of, just using something. Instead, here's my approach, right? I'm using Logic and I run into a bug. I don't have to report it or figure out exactly what causes it. I can just go on YouTube and complain about it. So, I mean, that's the perfect way, the perfect American response to being a non-beta tester, which is what all Apple users are for real. And then Elan says he also worked for Avid, but is now senior manager of Apple's audio systems division. Yeah, and I wish I could remember exactly with Tomlinson Holman if that was the exact title or something very similar. But again, looking for people to guide the ship. These are like top level positions that help navigate what happens over the next few years. And so it's a big deal. I have always been a fan of the Universal Audio stuff. I almost just bought one of their devices, but I held off just because, not just because of this news, but because of a number of factors. I don't know. It's like I like the idea of having some of those, the chips on board that help carry some of the processing. I like that idea. That was the way we thought about this all at the beginning of all of this. TC Electronic had one, the Power Core. Anybody remember the Power Core at all? It had some of my favorite plugins I've ever used, and you just plugged it in with a FireWire cable, and you could put processing on it. It didn't always, it helped. And we needed the help back then. Those were the days when Pro Tools was king because it had all of the DSP chips. And so we needed all of that. And so the Power Core really did help. but its lifespan was shorter than I thought it could have been. Feels like it was like discontinued or didn't support some new operating systems, and then FireWire kind of has gone away, obviously. And so I've always struggled with that mentality, the mentality of always upgrading hardware so that certain old things don't last anymore. I don't understand. I mean, I understand. It's called capitalism. They want us to buy new things. A company makes, 10,000 perfect audio interfaces that never go obsolete. They go out of business the next day because they need to constantly have this life cycle where, you use something and then eventually it's no longer usable, but you liked it. And so you buy the next one. That's Focusrite in a nutshell. That's Waves. Well, Waves is even more blatant with their, yearly product upgrade things. But and they don't. I mean, they have done some hardware, but I guess that's more software. But I've got like a Focusrite on the wall. I'll go back to the other screen for a second. This thing on the wall here, and that's a Scarlett 18i20, and it's like an obsolete product in many ways, but it's class compliant, which means I can use that thing until the end of time. And the software control for it, it's like some basic JavaScript thing, which will probably work for a long time. And so I don't even need drivers for it. And it's a thing of beauty, but I'm actually getting a new interface next week. So I'm getting one of the SSL 12s. It's the SSL, has 4 pre's, the SSL pre's on it with the 4K option. And then it has ADAT light pipe. And I can use that Scarlett as a light pipe source, so I can get all 12 in that way. So it's a great sounding little interface, around $400 or $500 maybe. And so I'm super excited to integrate that in. But anyway, I digress. Apple, their thing, I don't know if they're planning on doing any kind of hardware. Their hardware is the computer, and they're probably not going to ever say, you know what, let's add some DSP stuff so that you can run Logic on older computers. That's probably not the direction they're going. What they want you to do is to suffer until you can no longer bear your old computer, and then you'll buy a new one. That's the price of upgrading. Let's see. Music Factory Studios, catching up here. Apple would not work with UAD, but Apple might buy them out. It's possible. That would be one of the bigger purchases from Apple in the audio world, but it's possible. Camel is not as big as UAD, I don't think. And then we did get all the Camel stuff, which I loved Alchemy long before we had it in Apple, which was kind of nice. And then Gigadesk says if they can use Apple GPU cores as audio coprocessors would be an idea. DSP from UA is 20 times lower in power as a generic CPU. This is like all a moot point, I think, because we don't need extra DSP. I've installed the beta for the new GPU-based audio effect that's out there, one of the big ones that was in the news. It doesn't work. It didn't work when I installed the beta because it wasn't for the latest operating system, which, mind blown, why would they be developing this and not making it compatible with the latest operating system that was already released is a mystery to me. That's kind of like writing on the wall of something not being a great product to me. But I don't even understand that whole thing. If someone wants to explain to me, besides the cool factor or the power factor, like we don't currently have a problem with processors, not with audio. We don't have a problem with this. This is not one of the flaws of our system. We have the ability for, a fraction of what a recording studio would have been 20 or 30 years ago. We have endless power. That's not the issue that we're facing. Let's look down. Do you think Apogee's interoperability will go away? I really enjoy how my Apogee interfaces tie in seamlessly. Apogee's another company that I used to use a lot. I had the Symphony in one of the studios I worked at. And then what happened with that is they were too quick to get rid of old products, I thought. Ones that were still great sounding, but they are just like, ooh, we made this a little too good. Let's just kill the software instead of updating the software. That drives me bananas, because it shouldn't. I mean, you spend a lot of money on it. They should be creative and find other ways if they've made something that's too good. I guess. I don't know. And then Gigadeath says, Army fanboy disagrees to the 12. Or I know, I figured you might. Army is great. There's no dig at that whatsoever. But I've always, I've been a big SSL user for a long time. Both both are great. Music Factory Studio says the neural engine and video encoders are just FPGAs, which can actually run audio plugins. So they would likely use that over the GPU. That makes sense, actually. This is not an area of expertise, but I am curious to see why and where it's going. And then Felipe says there's a lot of competition, and Ableton took a lot of the market. Apple is good on reinventing that. Do you think that's a chance that we are going for a cloud or hybrid cloud logic? I don't think. I mean, if Apple could have their way, if Apple could say, this is the new way we're going to do this, and you're stuck with it, I think that they would make Logic a subscription model, just to defend keeping a team working on it. That's the problem with Logic, is that they haven't charged us for upgrades for so long. Their model has to be, or is, that people like us buy new computers every third or fourth year, right? I mean, realistically, there are some who make it last a long time. I think that there's a pathway for them to earn money on it, but right now we benefit from not having to pay for upgrades every year. I mean, look at what happened with, Reason. The Reason Studio, the Reason Plus or whatever. It's $20 a month to get all of the cool things. Some people are going to pay that, but there's a lot of people who just flatly online said they'll never pay for it. Now, I wonder, in all honesty, which of those people who said they would never pay for it are using a cracked version in the first place and never paid for it in the first place. I'm not saying it's even 50%. I'm sure there's a percentage there, but it's like a lot of people don't see the need to be constantly milked for money, even if they're getting good content along the way. Who knows? But Universal Audio has subscription type stuff. SSL has subscription type stuff. Focusrite has subscription type stuff. Waves has similar things. I mean, all of these companies are already doing it, and Apple's one of the last ones who doesn't have any option. Pro Tools is doing it. And so I don't know. Maybe they were just waiting until everyone else set the bar, the expectation, and then it happens. They'd be smart not to. They'd be smart to say, you know what? Let's keep Logic the same price, and let's just let people get new computers as they go. There's like a tax built into it. Let's see. I'm going through the comments. Cool. Elan says, well, they are going the DSP route with video. It's just not speed, but also efficiency and latency. You could easily get too much latency if you want to record something late in production. True. The low latency mode fixes a lot of that for what I do. Let's see. And we're stuck with Apple, says Elan. Before M1, I was considering leaving Logic since there was no laptops I wanted from Apple, but now the laptops are like insane. They're insanely popular, and fast, and just crazy powerful. Music Factory Studio says, right hardware encoding is the future. It is faster than doing the process on the CPU directly. So the only thing that I would say is that we've got to reinvent something. Apple took a huge step with silicon, reinventing how things tied together. Upside, power. Downside, inflexibility of like changing or upgrading. You pretty much now have, if you buy a computer right now, you have that computer until you get the next one. With my Windows computer, I could upgrade the graphics card, or other things. It's like the inflexibility of Apple is coming back again. And I think that they say, "Woo, look at all the shiny power we're giving you though. Like look at all the benchmarks. Every time we do a new one, it's incredible." And it is. It's really good. But does that make it is it worth that part we have to give up for it? And I think for me it is, personally, but I know it's not for everybody. Let's see. Nicholas says, totally agree with your response on Apogee's killing off the great products. My ensemble, exactly, the ensemble. That's another one that was really good. And Apple built some of their software around it, and it's really sad. They didn't need to do it. And then Mick and Dree says, just joining. Hi, how you doing? We've really been talking about hardware and some of the other companies, especially UAD. And then Estowis says, speaking of laptops, would you all recommend getting more priced MacBook Pro or MacBook Air? Obviously, MacBook Pro, it's all about money. You get the one you can afford is really, if you have endless amount of money for this, then sure, go for it. And then how about an app store or Apple Music or Arcade for plugins? So I've got some thoughts about this. Then we're going to talk about iPads after that. So the App Store does have plugins on it. I know probably maybe most of you aren't aware of that. They were hoping, and the App Store for Mac has succeeded in only some ways. The App Store for iOS has succeeded in all ways because they were able to lock it down and pretty much say that you couldn't really get stuff any other way, right? Well, the App Store on the Mac, it was too late when they did it. Everybody was getting things in a variety of ways already. And so they couldn't lock it down like I think that they were wishing they could. And that means that a lot of companies are like, well, if I've got a website where I'm already selling stuff and people are buying it through Sweetwater or B&H or whatever, why would I move to the App Store where I have to share my revenue? So that was kind of like dead on arrival in many ways. But there are some effects in there which you can do. The problem always goes down to we're looking at maybe some developers, not Waves, maybe not UAD, but anything that's a smaller company. If they can get a name for themselves and then sell their software without having to share revenue with Apple, they're never going to go to the App Store. So that problem has to be solved first to really make the App Store something that could be feasible. On top of that, I do really like the arcade, the Apple Arcade, which is their gaming thing. $5 and you get all of this content, and you do that. You'd have to have a lot of buy-in and a lot of people hungry to do that. And we just don't have the ecosystem of gaming with audio plugins. And we just don't have that. No one's going to become a millionaire off of creating a new audio processor. Unlikely. So there's a lot that would prevent that from happening. Mostly the revenue sharing. If Apple said, you know what, we're going to just open this up, and if you sell over $1 million worth of product, then you'll pay a tax, and it'll be a reasonable amount. And they let everybody in the ground floor, and no one had to pay a tax until they made over a certain amount. It was like a reasonable amount at that point, not 30% or whatever. Then I think that they could do something. They're like, why change something that's currently making us filthy rich? So I don't think that's going to happen. Estowis says, I think Apple will make their own version of Arcade. Arcade, I think, has changed the game, that and Splice, because NI is already emulating Arcade. Cool. Gigadeath says, I think it is more efficient to think about the plugins you need additionally to the stock plugins. Instead of having 26 reverbs, I like to have 2 more great ones, which adds to the stock ones. So I'm teaching a class at the university right now. I just had it this morning. Twice a week. It's a topics class, and it's all about reverb. And we pulled out really nice reverb today. like a $5,000 reverb. And that thing is beautiful. Use it with our SSL console, and it's just like every single one of them, every single patch. We pulled it up, and it just sounded good and real. I mean, that's the thing that's different, right? So super expensive, but just amazing what we're looking at here. I'm trying to see if we have one of these. Oh, low to high. Let's go high to low. Yeah, the Bricasti is so good. And I think the version we have is, let me pull this over, is this one right here, the Bricasti Design System 1 M7 Reverb with remote, $6,000. Every single one of those patches sounded good. And it was hard to really make one of them sound bad. Some of them were just not the right one. But it is just like Gigadeath is saying, we need to figure out what you really need in addition to what you have. In the case of Logic, I think one of its strengths is plugin per plugin, it matches any other offering out there in terms of the stock one and surpasses most of them. It has an amazing set of like stock things. Now, there's a few things it doesn't have. The new EQ from Eventide that breaks the tonal and the like plosive parts of the sound, the non-tonal parts, and you can EQ them independently. That's like game changing. And there's, other ones that are incorporating like machine learning, AI type stuff into what it's doing, so it gets you closer to what you need. Some of the isotope stuff is like mind-blowingly good. And so it's like you could probably add like 5 plugins and never need anything else from anywhere else. And anyone who tells me otherwise is like just full of BS. I don't need a Bricasti, but it sure is like fun to play with one, that's for sure. Okay, let me catch up on some of the comments. Cyril says, can we expect upgrades on the live loops feature? I'm suspecting yes. We just got one in a recent update that was probably more important than people realize. I did a video about it last night, and that's the Ableton Link, which is made for live loops and it lets you with a group of people all just like on the same network connect all of your timing information, and then live loops works like an amazing dream on there. It's so incredible. And so I think that they've taken live loops and brought it to the Ableton game slightly in terms of collaboration. And yes, Bricasti M7, I think that's one that was. We need a good dynamic EQ, and that's a good point. We have a lot of like EQs, but none of them are really reactive to things as you're playing them. And then a better multiband compressor. I think the one in there is okay, but it doesn't have any fancy bells and whistles. It's true. And then Gigadeath says the Bricasti is cheaper in the Union. Yeah, I'm not surprised. They do have some price differences. I wonder if part of our pricing is just shipping. Isotope RX is really great from AKC Andreas. And then Nicholas says, do you think there is going to be updates to the Logic instrument library? There have always been updates to the instrument library. We've gotten stuff over the years, the studio strings, the studio horns, Alchemy. We've gotten the sampler and all the stuff that goes with it. We've gotten loop banks, the drum machine designer update, the drum synths. We've always been getting new things. And so I think that that'll continue to be improving. I think that'll certainly be something that happens over time. But I'm expecting the buzzwords right now really surround things like AI. There's a lot of discussions about that. enhanced tools, smart instruments, which we've seen. So we've had smart instruments in GarageBand iOS for like ever. And we've never brought any of that technology into Logic. And I think we're going to see that, whether we want it or not. I think a lot of people, purists, are going to say, well, what the heck? Why do we need that? And what I mean by smart instruments are ones like Band in the Box or something, where you give it some parameters, like the drummer track, but expanded. And so you say, like, here are my parameters, and I want you to make the song in this form and be in this key signature and have this feel to it, and then it will do all the parts for you. Now, it's just a matter of time. Apple may be on the forefront of that. It may be on the end of it, but if you think it's not coming, there's already, I can't remember if it was Amazon or Google. I just saw an article. You can tell it really stuck with me who did it, but they already have a beta of an AI machine where you can hum or sing a melody, and it will build a whole song off of it in all different styles. It's already out there. Like, we're on version 0, wait till it's on version 5, and then you're going to this whole thing is going to shift under our feet so fast. And it's going to be like vinyl for Logic or Ableton. You know what I mean? We're all going to be running dinosaur machines and, or dinosaur tools. And the new tools are going to be like, I just thought of a really cool track, and all of a sudden it like materializes on an app. DDTB is what we used to call that. We used to joke in college that eventually, instead of headphones, we're just going to have like a jack in our forehead, direct digital to brain. And so you could plug whatever you want, and then you just hear it inside your head without having to worry about acoustics or physical limitations. I mean, that's going to be happening at some point. It's going to be happening. There's no way around it. We're humans. We're idiots. We don't want to do things the right way. We want to do things the easy way. And so I think that's all going to happen. Jamal says, bring back the chord track. No, don't bring back the chord track. That's a horrible idea. The chord track as it existed in Logic was horrible. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. It never did what it was supposed to do. If they want to bring back, or if you want a chord track, they need to bring back the actual maybe concept, but do it right this time. And actually make it so that you can actually hear things in the middle. My guess is that Apple is going to buy somebody who's doing something like the Melodyne DNA, the direct note access, where instead of just having pitch correction on a single monophonic note at a time, that they can actually do the polyphonic note correction and changes. Apple's not capable of doing that on their own. They're going to just buy somebody to do it for them. But if they're going to expand Flex, it's going to be into timbral stuff instead of just this monophonic pitch thing that's going on. I could see that happening in a heartbeat if they can find the right person who's willing to sell their soul for a lot of money. Let's see. Bernardo says they should update the electric pianos and best piano samples. Yeah, I don't disagree. There's actually quite a few things in the library which are just so. We have a bunch of pianos, right? Let's load. Nothing there. Let's see. Piano. And I'm going to enable patch merging just so I don't get sends. I don't like sends. So without reverb. Steinway piano, right? That's so. I never go to those default pianos anymore, and I use a third-party thing. I've really liked some of the East-West stuff over the years. One of their pianos I still think is one of my favorites. I'll just pull it up so anyone who's like, they're fine, can actually perhaps hear the difference. And we have the Steinway B. I mean, let's just see if we can hear. Right? That as opposed to the same chord. It just sounds wonky. It's like image is a little bit off and it doesn't have a smooth overall the whole frequency range. Both pianos in a pop song would probably work, but one of these is going to be. I mean, sounds so smooth. Logic doesn't have a piano that sounds like that. Not really. Gigadeath says, last word, make the ARA2 work like Studio One. Yes! We've had so many problems with ARA in Logic. So there's some room for upgrading that for sure. Okay, so many good ideas. And everybody has the thing that they want. The real question is this. Who's doing what we want that will sell it to Apple? I mean, that's the real conversation we always have to have. I mean, Camel Audio bought a lot of our sample libraries and stuff. I remember, using some of the string sounds in Logic. Not the studio strings. I don't know the full history of that. I should look it up at some point. But it's like we pull open one of our strings here, right? So like our violin ones. They don't sound great. But these used to be a Vienna library in the early days of Vienna that Vienna sold to Apple, or maybe through a third party or something. I don't know the exact pathway to Apple, but they used to be one of the early versions of Vienna strings that now are one of the stock libraries in Apple. And so great, that's how we get stuff. Like who can Apple buy that would be really cool? They've bought in so many things over the years. Redmatica, Camel Audio. I don't know where they got the studio strings from, but I'm sure it's like something along those lines. It's like everything's too quirky not to have that be the case. Let me give you an example. So for instance, let's undo that. Let's just make a new studio strings, right? Studio strings, pop it up. This interface is unique in Apple. We have articulations, and they actually made like an articulation ID set. And so we can like do string ensemble, right? And then we come over here, articulation set, Logic, studio strings, string ensemble. And now MIDI notes use articulation IDs to go through each of these. It's an incredible system. Only 2 instruments really use it in Logic. And you can get other ones. Like for instance, now I've got the Hollywood strings. They're all in here. They released a set for that. And so they work. But it's like hardly any other instruments use this. And so it's just like, okay, where did they buy this plugin that had this really great idea that they never fully fleshed out with all of the other instruments inside the software? So that's what we're running into is like sometimes we Frankenstein this a little too much, and sure, things sound great or are interesting, but where does it get us in the long run? That's the question. Ishby Productions make pitch more like Auto-Tune. I mean, Flex Pitch is similar to that already, but Auto-Tune was the first at the game and probably still one of the best at the game. Barry Cade says better MIDI effects would be cool. That's an open format, by the way. There are companies that can make, if they wanted to, make MIDI effects. And I think MIDI effects, audio units, the only one that I have would be the Reason Rack plugin. So Reason actually has opened up some of their stuff to be MIDI effects. And let's see, where are they? Utilities, maybe? Here's a arpeggiator. Yeah. So I don't know. I haven't actually used it like this, but we'll find out if it works. It doesn't seem like it, that's for sure. I might have to do something on here. Yeah, so I'll have to figure that out. But you can use them that way. Take that right back off. Yeah. So the third party could be doing it, but there's not a draw to it. And there were some that were trying to, and I don't think they made any money and they closed down. I haven't seen any in a while, but that's another thing that really should just be probably a Logic thing inside, because they've started a format that's part of, the AU format, but it just hasn't picked up with anybody else, and nobody else seems to be interested in doing it. So we end up with like a non-existent open format that other people could design in. In the end, there's only a certain number of MIDI effects that we really need, because after a certain point, it no longer really helps us get anywhere except maybe being cool. And then we end up with FL Studio, where they have that little dancer that's a MIDI effects, where you can make the dance, it like pops up on the screen and you can make it like do twirls and stuff by sending different MIDI data to it. We don't want to end up in that place. Maybe you do. Let's see. They should buy out Christian Hansen and Spitfire. Oh man, that would be cool. Oof. At some point though, as well, Apple and Logic look around and they say, there's already this company doing all this work and it works with Logic. So then they think, you know what, that's one less thing we have to do. And so I'm hoping they spend less time on things that are currently available and more time on improving the things that we actually have in there, which are relatively unique. What are the unique things in Logic? Everybody write like one thing that they think is unique about Logic. The drummer track for me is unique. There are other drummers out there, and some of them that sound better, and some of them that have more styles than the drummer track in Logic has. But the drummer track itself, the way it's integrated with its little matrix and the way that you can program and do all of that stuff, I've tried every other drummer out there, and I always come back to the drummer track and think, if we just had an expanded style selection, then it would be perfect. And that's true. It really would be. No, Young Orange, I don't think so. Nicholas says, oh yeah, Gigadet, that would be sick. I agree. Jamal says loop browser should be updated. That I do agree with. They were going in a different direction with this originally. Apple loops were supposed to be like this amazing tool where if you program in chord changes, it would actually change, but they never ever really fleshed it out and got the harmony things to work. So if you like went from a major to a minor, it didn't know how to do that. And so it was like promise of intelligence and result was totally stupid. And so I don't think that they ever really figured that out. And they really needed something like the Melodyne DNA to do that, because audio loops, if they have like a chord, you need to be able to make it, change the chord structure to make that work. And they just never, ever were at that point. Let's see. Oh, these are people putting the things that they think are unique. Ishb says drummer track definitely. Adam says, oh wait, no, that might be something else. If you have a Mac, the unique thing about Logic is the price for value. So true. If you have a Mac or can upgrade the Mac, then it's really not as good of investment. But you need a computer for whatever one you're doing, so that there's some of that carryover. Yolan says price over time. All of them together, all the plugins together are value. I agree with that. Let's see. Gigadeath says, I want buses, endless, unlimited buses, and the possibility to split audio to different tracks. So Studio One has the thing where you can do like frequency splits and then put plugins on like the high frequencies and plugins on the low frequencies, like a multi-band processing. I really wish Apple would do that. I would use that quite a bit. We have options for it. There's a Waves tool that you can do that with Waves plugins and VST3 plugins. And then there's the pedal board, which you can do that with, but those are not enough. Let's see. Make an updated browser for everything like Ableton says, Antonio. The browser itself is a little old and hard to search. And we need to be able to search through plugins and audio files and all of that stuff. And then Young says they should make a Fab Filter type EQ built in. I agree with that too. The Fab Filter stuff's amazing. I don't know about Rewire. I don't use Rewire anymore, thank goodness, now that Reason Rack is a plugin. And with the advent of Ableton Link, which if they just expanded with timing location, right now it's just a tempo thing, but if they expanded with actual location information, then it would be like Rewire, but better anyway. Oh, so the last thing we're going to talk about for the last 5 minutes of this stream, because that's as far as I can go. iPad. So the last thing that we saw not too long ago was an iPad Pro in the wild running a new type of OS that was like a pared back version of OS 10. You have to realize that the iPad, they're very powerful. They might be limited in terms of overall RAM amounts, but they have the same structure as any of the Silicon Macs. And it's just an interface thing. But they have all the power to run. They could run Logic easy. They're more powerful than like computers from like 5 years ago. And so I'm fully expecting something to happen in the iOS world that will make waves. It'll be something like, I've been using Cubasis on my iPad sometimes for class demonstrations or just sometimes in videos I'm making. And it works really well. It's very smart about its space usage on the screen. And there's a few things I don't like, but overall I'm like, okay, this is possible. And with DaVinci Resolve just putting a version on the iPad, it's in beta. I don't think it's released yet. It might be, but I don't think so. Before Apple even does Final Cut on an iPad, I think that we're right on the brink. We are right on the brink of having a version of video and audio production on the iPad. And that will define where Logic goes next. I think that's the real key here. I think that's going to change everything about where we're seeing things going. For better or worse. I mean, probably both of those things simultaneously. Gigadesk says, if I could have Logic on iPad for rehearsals or concerts, thumbs up. More than GarageBand. GarageBand has not changed in years. I mean, let's be clear. It's one of the most popular music workstations out there. Hands down, it's on more people's devices than we could even understand because it's on the iPhone and iPad, right? iPhones are literally everywhere. You can do an entire song on there, but it hasn't changed. Like, when it first came out, like the iPad and iPhone were here, GarageBand in terms of power usage were here, right? As those devices have gone up, GarageBand has stayed right here. Like, it doesn't use any of this stuff in between there. It uses a fraction of the power that are on those machines. And so I think that we're going to really see something new in that space in 2023. And if we don't, then I'm going to question, like, what is Apple really wanting with this? Like, what is their end game with their music production stuff? If they're going to keep GarageBand as limited as it is with the power available, then there's some serious defunct thought process happening in headquarters that I don't understand. I can understand when they had to do that because the devices weren't powerful enough, but now that's clearly not the case. And so I just I won't understand if they don't do something. Okay, so let's see. Thanks everybody for being here. YouTube keeps on wanting me to insert an ad in the middle of our conversation, and I've refused for all of your sake. But I've got to go. I have little monsters to pick up from school. I know, right? We're going to do that for a few minutes. But thanks for watching and making this like a super awesome conversation. I think we're going to have to do another one of these because we didn't even get to like rumors 5, 6, and 7 that I had written down. But we'll definitely get to those. We'll do another roundup in February and have another discussion because there are some other things that are looking promising. And so I think that we'll have those discussions as they happen. Anyway, thanks everybody. I will talk to you later. Thanks for being on the stream. Catch you on the next one.